it is easier to manage Gen Y than Gen X or the other generation, because the manipulation is less. You need to walk the talk with Gen Y, keep it simple and straight, tell them this is what it is, and they will understand it. But if you want to play games with them, if you want to do the manipulation, if you want to go the theory X way, it will not work. Okay? The theory Y of McGregor should be applied to Gen Y, and it is very, very easy to manage these people. That's what I found from my experience.
Thank you. There definitely seems to be consensus in this panel as well that the issue is for real. A quick yes or no answer. Is this industry agnostic or not? Is it industry agnostic?
I don't think so.
As far as, I mean, I would think my generic inference is yes, but certainly specific to my industry, certainly a big yes.
Right. Mayur?
Yeah, for an FMCG company, yes, it is. Or FMCG industry, it is.
Yes.
Yes. Right. Thank you. Before we get into specific practices that we see in either acquisition, attraction, keeping and growing the employees in the organization, one question to each one of you about how the policies are developed. When we work on the human resources policies, do we actually define some of these keeping in mind the various profiles we have in the organizations, the baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, or is it a one-size-fits-all, kind of throwing in some elements for each of these profiles?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. In fact, it's a problem that I myself have faced with a lot of my HR managers. Generally, it is, people tend to think or used to think that it is one size fits all. Okay, we draft a set of rules, we draft a set of regulations, policies, procedures, follow it. What we tend to forget is that if we are the people who frame those policies, we are also the people who can change those policies. We tend to put them into straitjackets and say, this is the policy, follow it. This is the rule, follow it. That is no longer the case. Today we have to be flexible. We have to understand situations. We need to understand the fact that policies were made so that proper functioning of the organization is maintained. If policies need to be made flexible or need to even be eliminated, so be it. But this is something that in a lot of companies, HR managers are afraid to face because they find sanctity and security behind policies and procedures. The policy says this, follow it. Don't come and ask me whether it's right or wrong. And I think that is something that we've got to change, especially as we spoke about, Gen Y being people who are ready to deliver, provided they are given the freedom in which they can do the deliveries.
I think the valid point here is that, if you do not have flexibility and you're willing to change policies around what is the need of the hour, it's simple. In the hospital environment, we have different categories of staff. And if you do not have flexible policies to cater to the different categories, a lot of these youngsters who join us come back, throw data on us and challenge the policies that we put in place. Because that is what Gen Y is all about. Gen Y is questioning, Gen Y is more alert, Gen Y has all the data with them, and Gen Y can challenge any situation. So they are willing to engage in an intellectual debate with you on why that particular policy is working or not working in the organization. So because of that, we've had to cater to individual differences to the different categories of staff and some level of unit differentiation, since we have 52 hospitals across pan-India, and there is a degree of flexibility that we have to offer in the units also. Otherwise, in simple terms, as it said, it just will not work. I mean, for some time it will work under bureaucracy, under the garb saying we framed as, the mindset is not there. But yes, if you really want to engage with them and looking at a long-term bet on your talent, then you obviously have to be flexible and change according to the requirements.
Jacob, I'll stay with you for just one more minute. You mentioned that this is a real issue in the healthcare industry specifically, and from our experience of looking at the hospitals, you have these really senior medical professionals, doctors, surgeons, what have you, who have years of experience behind them, and then you have the newbies who join with these, masters and all these foreign degrees, etc. So, did you see a conflict here in terms of having to develop policies which will be inclusive of both these generations? How do you handle that?
If you look at most hospitals, yesterday I was talking to a section of students here also. The drivers for any hospital is clinical excellence and service excellence. Now, most of the clinicians, the senior consultants who have been with the hospital, are star consultants, and they have been with the group for a very long time, and 60, 65, even 70, 75 plus. So they really are the ones who basically manage the clinical excellence part of it. But yes, there are a lot of aspiring minds who come to join these senior consultants. And today, a lot of these younger doctors who are part of the DNB program, or even come to look at a serious career in the hospital, we've had to change career movement on the vertical scale to ensure that they stay with us. And we've had to change our policies, because one thing is clear: the senior consultants who's been with the hospital, who's the star consultant, he really will not relinquish his position, nor do they really groom the youngsters in order to take over their chairs for various medical, I mean, if you really understand the mind of a medical professional, it works very differently in terms of mentoring, succession planning. Some of those things are not echoed in the same manner as we talk about other categories of staff in FMCG or manufacturing, or etc. But an equal challenge for us is to how do we develop these younger professionals who come and join the medical field to ensure that they stay with us for a longer period. So we've had to change, I would say, 3 to 4 important policies and processes we've had to change in the last 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. Mayur.
So on the policies front, there are certain policies which are universal in our organization, which are applicable to all. But definitely we identified there are certain reasons why we need to have some flexibility coming in. So I can give certain examples that Pepsico has worked on, and so we faced a challenge of dual careers. Now Gen Y, when you talk about, it's not only a career of, say, a man or a woman, it is a career of a family which gets impacted. So when you are moving a person out, we need to take care of that. We had done certain exceptions in when we got a person to move to a metro location where both husband and wife can work. So those changes are there, but as I mentioned, PepsiCo is a younger organization. So can I say that, okay, say a 98 batch or a 99 batch is a Gen Y, and maybe a Gen X, or say a 2010 batch is a Gen Y? It will be difficult for me to do that kind of a differentiation. So when I do a exception for a Gen Y, there is a Gen X minus who stands up and says, why you are differentiating that? So I need to have that balance. Certain changes on, so giving them rotation on 2 years basis, because that's a requirement. Certain changes on having a sabbatical policy for them, which is slightly different from the older population as such. So those are flexibility that we are kind of bringing in the organization, but they are universal policies, and those are applicable to everyone as such.
Thank you. View from ITC, Swaroop?
Yeah, we do come across changes for policy in view of the Gen Y requirements, and what we typically do is in the senior management, we ask ourselves 2 questions. Number 1, the policy changes that are being requested by Gen Y, do they fit into our core values of the company? So if they satisfy the policy of X regarding repatriation or whatever it is, family benefits or whatever it is, if they qualify our core values, we have a set of core values of the company which are non-negotiable. So irrespective of whether it's Gen Y, Y minus X or X or whatever it is. Once they fit into the core values, the second question that we ask, does this policy satisfy the business imperatives of the organization? So there are 2 dimensions. One, core values, the other one is the business imperatives. If these 2 conditions are met, then it easily goes through for a change in the organization.
Thank you. Before we move into the next segment of the discussion, which is really getting into specific best practices spanning an employee life cycle. I'd like to open the floor out for a couple of quick questions for the next 5 minutes or so on anything that has been discussed in the first half hour.
There was a mention of a policy change being implemented for Gen Y. Normally when a policy change is implemented, there is a sufficient amount of time that is required. Mostly Gen Y is impatient and may not be ready to wait for that long for that policy change to get implemented. How would you address this problem?
See, normally any change in policy is done after substantial thinking. You know, it's not just based on 1 or 2 stray cases, but data is gathered to see whether there is validity in the need for change of this policy. Yes, but to some extent, it frustrates the person who has asked, and he or she doesn't have the patience to wait and say, it's affecting me, I need to look at it. So when there is a need, and if it is something that really needs to be looked at critically, an exception is made only for that one or for that particular case. But from a generic perspective, it takes a lot of thought. There are debates, data is looked at, only after that it is changed. But exceptions are made only where there is a strong need to look at it as an exception, and when there is a need to ensure that yes, it may have an imperative effect on something else if you don't look at this as an exception. So I think, and what I'm trying to say, it's not one stroke fits all. You have to look at each situation, and depending on the need of that, you have to change, make an exception, revamp it, re-engineer, engage with that particular employee, talk to them, have focus groups. So there, I mean, it's various interventions are required to address a change in policy.
When you have a customized approach in terms of changing on the case basis, now there may be different variations in the way you do things, isn't it? It's not a standardized approach. So how do people interpret that kind of the culture in that sense? Do they find that there is fairness, or I'm looking at from the perspective of Gen X?
See, I think things have changed. You customize policies or practices for a particular segment, not in isolation, for a particular category of staff, for a particular segment. But I think the thinking goes that it's all about communication, and people need to understand the rationale why. So I think various interventions would be done across the organizations on communicating to that particular group why this is done. And you need to have answers to the group where this is not being customized. But all within the framework and ambit of a larger framework is what your customization happens. You can't have diagonally opposite things which I think what he rightly said was, does it fit in with our values, does it fit in with our system? And then based on that, we can look at these changes for a particular segment where there is a compelling need to look at it. So, and it has to be a logical business decision.
One last question for this segment.
So we discussed that in bringing a policy, we need to look at the data, and then only we bring about any policy change. But my question is, let's say organization brings in a new policy, and before relooking into the policy, the organization will in fact look at the data whether the policy has been successful or not. But in the meantime, what is the effect of the policy on the employees within the organization? Let's say the policy is not liked to the employees in the organization. So you lose a sufficient amount of time in recorrecting the policy, and it may have a negative effect on the workforce. So how do organizations look at that?
Okay, that's the call that you have to take. There is no universal or generalized principle of that. It depends on case-to-case basis. If you are delaying your decisions, then you need to have a balance between two opposing factors. One is employee demotivation because you are delaying your decisions and you are not, aligning the policy towards the Gen Y. That is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is, on account of the delay, if this motivation it continues to be at this level, what is its impact on the business of the company? Okay, so you need to balance these two factors and see if the industry as a whole is going to lose heavily. The top management will sit in an emergency session, will discuss the subject, and will see what needs to be done. If the top management takes a call that this is a subject which needs further data to be collected, and then we need to take a call upon it, then it will take the other decision. So how successfully does this top management take a call, whether its hunches are right or not, will depend on each case to case and organization to organization basis.
Thank you, Swaroop. Now, like I mentioned, we'll get into some specific best practices spanning the life cycle of an employee in the organization, and what better place than to start with talent attraction and acquisition. Every organization has its hiring principles. Now, the question to the panel is, have you had to change your hiring principles, alter it, tweak it, what have you, to be inclusive of the new animal out there, which is Gen Y? Mayur, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So I'll take this question. I have to change hiring principles. Yes, many times I do that, but I'll not say I'll change it again universally. It will be for, say, a particular reason or a particular person or a particular role. So certain changes which I was kind of discussing before also on hiring principles of, so I'll give you an example of campus placement that we go in, and we had a particular way of doing campus placements, and we got a feedback coming in that we were not engaging the campuses that we were visiting. So we changed that. We went ahead and launched something called Become Indra Advisor, which Indra Nui, which you would be aware is the CEO of Pepsico worldwide. And we run a campus program for them, for campuses where people participate in case studies, and the winner gets to fly to New York and present it to Indra. So it's a big engagement activity that we did. Whether the principle got tweaked up, yes. The summer trainee program which we had was kind of, it came second, because a winner of this, even if he or she has not done a summer training or does not have experience, comes from a different industry, yes, we hire them. There is a learning curve which is there, which goes beyond 1 year mandatory program which we have, but we are ready to invest in that. Simple that we need to engage with campuses, we need to have the best talent coming in, and again a requirement of Generation Y. So that is one area which we can kind of work on.
Thank you. Glenn?
Yeah, my experience has also been that we need to tweak the recruitment process if we really need to get the best people. I will go back to my Motorola days when we had a similar program like was just mentioned. I remember that when we were looking for high potential candidates, what we said was we will take the top rankers from some of the leading engineering colleges in the country. We will then select 3 people every year and send them to Motorola University in Chicago to train them in the way that Motorola wanted its high potential officers to behave. This was a fantastic success. We got some really good leaders out of that program. We also started a chair in IISc Bangalore, where we said the best students coming out of that particular discipline will be groomed to take a leadership role in the company. So this was out of the normal recruitment process. This was something that helped build a layer of leadership which went beyond normal routine recruitment.
Thank you. Jacob, we spoke about values that an organization stands for, which often gets reflected in the value of the organization, the brand of the organization, or the employment brand of the organization. Can you share some examples of what Apollo does to reflect the employment brand, or the values in an employment brand?
I'll give you a practical example to answer that question. Within the healthcare industry, especially hospitals, the attrition rate amongst the nursing community is as high as 25%. The attrition rate amongst the doctor community, resident doctors on rolls, is as high as 20-25%. And this continues to be a challenge for every hospital player, be it Fortis, be it Max. Your nurses leave in a period of maximum 2 years is their life with any hospital. After that, it's either US or it's either the Gulf. And for doctors, they look at a PG course. Once they get admission, they move on to a PG course. So in terms of attraction of talent from a brand perspective, what Apollo has had to do is that we've had to really change the way in which after nurses are taken in, the program content for them to be good nurses on the floor. We've had to completely rejig that in line with the values of the organization. So to give you a practical example, it used to take nurses have a bond. Now the nursing council has said you cannot have a bond for nurses. And what they've also said is that we used to give a bonus at the end of 1.5 years to ensure that nurses continue to stay with us. And they take about 2.5 to 3 years to move to the next level. So the first, I would say 30 to 50 days, what Apollo does is we basically put the entire nursing community through what is known as an orientation program with the values of the organization. And what we try to do is that just make these nurses believe patient care, patient excellence, service excellence is a part of life. So they go through various sessions, be it from industry practices, be it from within the organization, chairman's message. There are a whole lot of interventions that we do to ensure that there is a congruence of the Apollo values with what the nurses have to basically look after a patient day in, day out. I was mentioning yesterday also, ours is the only industry where we really have to make a difference in touching a person's life. And if anything goes wrong there, when the brand gets shattered, and so also the entire process mechanisms of a patient's faith in the system. So I think taking into account all of this, Apollo it's a challenge. I do not have a straight-jacketed answer to tell you that we've done this is the success that we've achieved. But yes, through a revamp of the process, we made a difference in ensuring that the brand Apollo is not compromised, and the values that we stand for are basically instilled in the minds of each and every staff who works for the hospital.
Mayur, I'd like to ask you, and you've already done your bit the last half hour, when you were talking about Gen Y, you said, "Ye dil mange more." You did your pitch already. Right? What else do you people do to reflect your employment values in the employment brand?
So, employer brand for us is, more than dil mange more. It is mera number kab aayega, and nothing official about it, and multiple things.
Youngistan as well.
And the helicopter shot now. So for us, we brand and employer brand is a very important part of the entire strategy of talent management in Pepsico. When we hire somebody, say from campus or even from a lateral hiring, from campus we have a particular program called Under Our Wings, and that's the program that we have done. It's a brand that we work with. When we do a lateral hiring, we talk about Pepsico as a career, and so there's multiple things that we talk about, and we have values, as mentioned, very important for any organization to have a core values and something which is there. We talk about our org structures, we talk about our businesses, we talk about our brands, and we talk about our brand ambassadors. So Karina is a big draw for us, and so is Sachin Tendulkar. We also talk about giving them multiple exposures, and when we say that, we are not talking about India as a business. India is a talent it's an area where we export talent to various parts of Mexico. So that's something that we kind of promise, and we work towards it. There is leadership academies that we run for various levels, depending upon which functions you are from, and those people are identified as high potentials, and special focus is given on them. We work on providing career opportunities to so we have few companies who allow husband and wife to work in the same organization, and that's the simple reason is when people move, say from say Bombay to Gurgaon, it is not possible for the spouse to get employment immediately. So we support that also. They may not be in the same function or reporting to the same person, but they can be in a different function, and we support that. We have strong sabbatical policies. There is a need where employees are asking for breaks for education, so we provide that with a clear understanding that they'll come and join Tata. Employee has a right to say no to that role that time, but still we are open to that. So these are the few areas that we work with and ensure that talent is managed.
Swaroop, any unique practices you can share from an ITC perspective about what you do to attract talent, promote employment brand?
Okay. ITC has got 12 different businesses. It's an advantage, it's also a disadvantage. When I go to IIT Bombay, the girl will ask me, where am I being posted? I'll say paper boards. Oh, paper boards, no. Can I go to Foods Division Bangalore? So that's what they'll say. So the Gen Y these days, they prefer non-manufacturing jobs. And what we